Hey everyone, it's Joe from greenlightsound.com, and today we've got a look at Shade, a new plugin from UVI, which is an EQ plugin, but it's a little bit more than that. It also includes some really creative filtering and modulation options. So it combines a really impressive 35 different filter shapes, which is much more than most EQ plugins have, with 9 different types of modulators that can be dragged and dropped onto any filter parameter. So with common mixing style filter types to analog-inspired synth-style resonant filters, to phasing and flanging. I mean, it can handle pretty much any filtering needs from the most basic mixing tasks to the extremely creative. And the first thing I'd like to do is just start with the controls. It starts with a pretty blank interface here. The preset bar is right at the top. We can take a look at any of the presets. We'll look at those a little bit later. We can click and drag the top bar and the right bar here on the graph to set the area of focus for the frequency, which is the top here. Dial in a certain frequency range you want to look at closely, or gain on the right. Trigger at the top bar allows you to set the input for envelope-based modulators between direct or sidechain audio, right down here, MIDI, or synced, which is time-based on the host clock. We've got undo, redo right at the top, copy and paste for your settings. And if I play some audio here, you'll see there's a spectrum analyzer, input and output meters on the right side. Now, if I want to create a filter, if I double click on the line, I get a peak style filter. That's our default setting. I can right click here for a quick filter menu where I can pick all the different styles of filtering we have. If I double click on a filter, it deletes it. Bring it back in. If I Alt or Option click it, it bypasses that filter shape and you can reinstantiate it the same way. And if I had multiple filters going on, I could drag around them to select them all together. The filter tab on the bottom of the graph here allows you to drag and drop and change the order of filters. Plus sign will allow you to add another filter if you'd like. And then we have our filter controls right below the graph for actual knobs to dial in. Well, I have them all selected. If I select just one, frequency, gain, the slope, and the bandwidth or Q width. The main settings gear on the lower right side of the graph here has an input and output gain control and a mix knob, which is really nice. The arrow that we have right down here at the bottom expands to show the modulation section. And we just click the plus sign to add a new modulator. I'll click one randomly. So if I choose one of my filters, all I'd have to do is drag and drop from the title bar right here onto a parameter. I'll go frequency here. You can see they match up. There's E1 here and E1 here. Easy drag and drop. If I click and drag next to the target knob, you can see that blue line around the knob move. That changes the modulation depth really easily. If I double click it, it gets rid of that modulator. If I added some more modulators here, I can just grab on top and move the order of modulators. And then if I double click here, I collapse or expand the actual panel. And you can kind of get a small view of the different modulators you have. Double click, it opens it back up again. If I click a filter type again, and I look down here at the global control bar, besides a power button, which turns it on and off, in addition to Alt or Option clicking it, I can use that power button. I've got this here. I've got stereo, left, right, mid, side, left only, right only, mono, and side signal. So a lot of different processing options for the EQ as well. I'm going to jump over to the UVI manual quickly to go through the different filter types because there are so many of them. On the right-hand side, we've got low-pass resonant filter, pretty typical. Low-pass multi-resonant filter. By the way, on the slope, we've got the variable slope from 6 dB to 2000 dB per octave, which is amazing. We've got a low-pass multi-resonant filter with a few different resonant peaks. A low-pass expander with some saturation and drive. You can soft saturate it, you can clip it. This is a analog modeled or circuit modeled op-amp silent key low-pass filter, so a totally different type of low-pass filter. We've got the high-pass resonant, high-pass expander, notch resonant filter, notch with multiple resonances, bandpass with multiple resonances. Going down even more, high shelf, regular EQ, high shelf with resonance, low shelf with resonance, low shelf regular EQ of course, peak with resonance, peak standard EQ, phaser with all kinds of notches, extended phaser with additional controls here. More phaser types down on the left-hand side of the manual here. So a whole page of different phaser types. Comb filtering or flanging, whole page of these. Basic gain increases the gain of everything. A tilt filter, an expander, which is analog modeled with resonance and drive control. It's amazing, just a ton of different filter types. 35, as I said, different filter types. And many of these filter types have specific controls down here in the global line specific to it. So if I was to go to, let's say, a low pass filter expander here, you can see there's a drive knob now included and different types of saturation included. So this does change depending on what filter type you've got. If I jump back over to the UVI manual, we'll see our modulator types. We've got normal envelope follower, a figure, which is kind of like a two-dimensional LFO, another follower here, typical LFO, macro, which kind of lets you control a bunch of things from one place, MSEG, which stands for multi-step envelope generator. It's sort of like a step sequencer for the different shapes of modulation you can have. Some random modulation here, spread, which allows you to do certain things in left, right, mid, side, or surround mode, standard XY modulator. And that covers those 9 different modulator types. So a bunch of different ways to modulate all the different parameters and all those different filters. So you can see how if you were to combine modulation with all of these different filter types, you could come up with some really creative effects. So we're going to go back to the default look here. Here's a simple synth part without any processing going on. Sort of a low mid-rangey synth sound here. Just to get some simple tasks going, we could easily place a high pass filter, a low pass filter, and I'm just right clicking to get these different filter shapes. Double click for my normal peak filter. Let's say I want a resonant peak here. Choose the filter type. I can easily just dial in whatever shapes I want. If I wanted to add some modulation, I just open this up, choose a modulator. Here, I'll just pick an LFO. Let's say we wanted to do this peak filters frequency. There we go. Can change the shape of the LFO. And any of those parameters can easily be modulated that way. To show you really in depth what it can do, let's go through some of these presets. You can hear how much motion we're getting and saturation. You can see this is the MSEG modulation type. So just a crazy amount of motion here. Let's try some pumping. That's amazing sounding. If I put that in the full track, it'll sound cool. And if you wanted to, you could dial the mix back. So it's not quite as extreme as an effect. And without it, here's just the plain synth. And back in. Just some nice motion there. Right. Let's go to animated complex. What a way to add some rhythm and motion to that synth part. Nice. Try a couple more. So we can take just really the most basic instrumental parts, or vocals or whatever, and add a lot of motion and saturation to them and a lot of interest to them just by adding these simple presets and some easy filtering. You can set it up for yourself if you wanted to as well, but sometimes it's nice just to get a sense of the different presets. Let's go to color here. That's that hard clipping. So you get some sort of amp tones in there too, which is really nice. Let's go to dynamic here. Which, by the way, if you hook up the follower to any of your EQ bands, you suddenly have a dynamic EQ as well. Let's go for some basic filtering. Auto Y would work a lot better with more transients. Some moving effects. Some really cool comb filtering there. Looking to like just a regular phaser style. So these are based on some really famous guitar pedals like a Phase 90. With some flanger. I'll solo up the synth so you can hear this flanging by itself. Different phaser types. And in the utility section, what I found kind of interesting, you have some classic EQs set up for you. Here's the Chandler EQ. You've got your frequency and gain settings for the different ones that are matched to the Chandler EQ. Down here, we've got a Pulse TEQ. That's a Pultec. So you have our low frequency and our low boost and attenuation, typical really wide Pultec style filters. We've got another one under the utility for Triton style EQ. So this thing really covers all the tasks from basic mix style EQ to synth style filters, creative modulation, some saturation, phasing, flanging, and pretty much any filtering task you can imagine. So there it is, Shade from UVI, a really creative and really cool tool. I highly recommend this one. It's a very cool option for mixing and sound creation. If you have any questions or comments, let me know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already so we can keep you in the loop as to what's coming up next, and I'll see you in the next one.